Now it is time to get to the comments that you guys have on Lucas Taylor's commitment to Syracuse. I woke up this morning and I was like, hey, let me see what you guys think. So let's get right to it. This coming from Cuse Man 7. If this is a depth piece, I'm fine with it, but this isn't a piece that's going to push us over the needle. I agree. I believe it is a depth piece for this team, and that's why I said yesterday that if Lucas Taylor were to not to commit to Syracuse, that it wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world. You're not missing out on one of the 10 best players in the portal or anything like that. So it is a depth piece. But what's wrong with depth, right? This is a team that for years has lacked depth. I mean, last year, how many players were actually playable? How many? By the end of the season, 5. They had Judah Mintz, JJ Starling, Chris Bell, Malik Brown, and Quadir Copeland. And everyone else they brought on the floor, it felt like didn't belong. So you bring in more depth, that's good. I agree, it's not something that's going to push us over the needle. You're not getting from middle of the pack of the ACC to now the best team in the ACC, or you're not going from maybe a projected 10 seed in the tournament to now a 5 seed. It's not one of those needle-moving, tier-moving moves, but it gives the team a little bit more depth, as you pointed out. So that's a good comment right there. Let's go to this one from Bill Keene. I hope I'm saying that right, Bill. This further balances the roster, i.e. legit big, who is an inside scoring threat, Eddie Lampkin. Strong small forward who can score inside and shoot mid-range, Jyare Davis. Point guard who will better facilitate the offense, getting all involved, Jaquan Carlos. And another shooter, Lucas Taylor. Good work, Adrian Autry and staff. Yeah, it does further balance the roster. You get more depth on the wing. As I mentioned, you can put Lucas Taylor at the 3 as well. So if you want to go small ball, I mean, there are so many different lineup combinations that you can make. Doesn't it feel like this year they have a lot more depth on their roster than in years past? It really just feels that way. It feels like we can make more lineup combinations. More. You want to put Donnie Freeman at the 5. You want to put Jyare Davis on the floor with Chris Bell. You want to put Lucas Taylor at the 2. Do you want to put him at the 3? By the way, Lucas Taylor is a pretty good passer as well. He's got a high assist rate. So dare I say you want to try him out at point guard. And yeah, he brings in shooting to your point, Bill. I think Adrian Autry, obviously we were very happy when it came to the Sadiq White commitment in terms of high school recruiting, but I feel like a lot of people have been a little underwhelmed by what they've done in the transfer portal. But if you look at where they rank in terms of their team ranking for transfer portal, they're actually pretty high. Like they're top 25 overall in transfer portal rankings. They got one of the better commit classes coming in the country. So yeah, I think that Adrian Autry has done a solid job this offseason. He hasn't necessarily gotten a big splash player. I mean, last year they got JJ Starling in the transfer portal. Look how that turned out, though. Luke, he's been good. Nobody else really worked out from that class. I mean, Naheem McLeod can be a good backup center, but yeah, I think it further balances the roster. It is a solid addition. This one now coming from Daniel. After the last few years, I'm never going to complain about getting a guard with size that can shoot ever again. Yeah. I get your point, Dan. I get your point. Are we really going to complain about the move? I think most people are pretty happy about it. I think the most pessimistic people will say what happened earlier, which is it's not a move. You're not moving the needle with this. I'm on board with that. I'm not overreacting and saying, yeah, they're going to win the ACC now that they got Lucas Taylor, but no reason to complain. There's no reason to really complain about this move. At this point in the game, you're at June 5th. There aren't a lot of super quality options left in the transfer portal. And given Syracuse's roster right now, I don't think they're really going to pursue any big splash move. At this point in the game, Lucas Taylor is a fine option. This one now coming from Bill Enderbark. Love the signing. It was getting a little late. It's June. I know. It's June. It was getting a little bit late. So I'm relieved we have another shooter, one with deep range. Yeah, I mentioned that, deep range. Not sure how his D or his minutes will affect Chapa. He's talking about Elijah Moore, obviously. But it's a great depth piece for Autry to mix and match lineups, especially if his three-point shooting ticks up. I talked about it with Elijah Moore, Bill. It's insurance on him. It's possible that Lucas Taylor next season is completely obsolete. I have him right now probably penciled in for about 10 to 15 minutes a game. Yeah, if Elijah Moore is hitting his three-point shot, though, I believe he could probably hit at a higher clip than Lucas Taylor might ever get to. I mentioned how he was 40% in his small sample size at Wake Forest for that one season in 2023, but it's an extremely small sample. And last year at Georgia State, he was 35% on a large sample. Hopefully he splits the difference and he's 37, 38% next year from three. Elijah Moore, it seems like he's got the upside to be one of the best three-point shooters in the conference. I just don't know when that will happen. Is it for next season? Or is it in seasons to come? That's the main question for Elijah Moore. This move, as far as how it affects his minutes, it comes down to whether Elijah Moore is hitting his shot or not. If he is hitting his shot in training camp, and in the exhibition games, he's hitting his three-point shot, and maybe they play him a little bit in regular season games in the beginning of the season. If Elijah Moore is hitting his three-point shot at a high clip, he's going to see the floor. You don't just stash players who can shoot at an elite level on the bench. You don't. But if he's only hitting at a similar rate to Lucas Taylor, then you're probably going to play Lucas Taylor a lot more given his experience. The fact that he's 6'5", can also play the small forward. And Elijah Moore's not a small kid. It's really just the experience, the fact that he's going to be a senior next season and can shoot at basically the same rate. So that's how I think it impacts Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore basically determines how much minutes he's going to get next season. Put it that way. If he's hitting a shot at an elite level, you're not benching him. It's kind of like Chris Bell, who he doesn't do a lot of things well, but if he's hitting his shot at over a 40% clip from three, you're putting him on the floor. He's such a threat. You have to put him on the floor. Same deal with Elijah Moore. He's hitting at a high rate. Lucas Taylor is not going to impact his minutes much. But Lucas Taylor does provide insurance in case that Elijah Moore isn't hitting his shot right away. So good comment for you there, Bill. Let's move on now. This comment coming from Carter. I think this year's team will be much better offensively. We lost Malik and Judah. Donnie may not be as good defensively as Malik, but he can definitely produce more offensively. And we have tons of guards to replace Judah's production. Plus, we have a capable center now. So, Carter, to your point, yeah, they did not find a one-for-one replacement in a portal for Judah Mintz. It was going to be really hard to find one like that. Judah Mintz last year was second team all ACC, who led the team in scoring. What did he average? 18 points per game, something like that. He might not necessarily be an NBA player, but he is certainly an elite college basketball player. The only way they would have been able to find someone one-for-one was a player like Malik Mack. He would have basically been a one-for-one replacement. But to your point, I remember in the very beginning of the offseason, I talked about the aggregate and how it's not necessarily about replacing a player one-for-one. It's about, can the average impact of the players you brought in be greater than the ones that you have lost? That's the difference right there. So if we're looking at the guards from last season who are going to play, last year it was a rotation of Judah Mintz, JJ Starling, and then Quadir Copeland, really. That was the main three. This year, it's Jaquan Carlos. You still have JJ Starling. Now you have Lucas Taylor, Elijah Moore, and I know people will say Kyle Cuff. I don't know if they've necessarily improved the guard position, but if you're looking in terms of the aggregate, the fact that you do have that extra player now off the bench, I think it gives this team a little bit more depth, as I mentioned. So while they're not as elite with Judah Mintz and the top-end talent, they do have more depth to perhaps cover that up. So that's a good comment by you, Carter. I tend to agree with you. They also do have a center that is perfectly capable of being a starting caliber center. That is Eddie Lampkin. He's pretty good, not an all ACC once again, but solid player in Eddie Lampkin. So good comment to you there, Carter.